Welcome back to the nervous system for the video part 2. We will still continue on 11.2 on the human nervous system. Let's do a bit of recap on the previous video where we learned the 3 different types of the neurons. Sensory neurons, which is the second diagram here. They transmit the nerve impulse from the receptor to the central nervous system. Motor neurons transmit the nerve impulse from the central nervous system to the effector. Today we will learn more about the relay or the intermediate neurons, where it transmits the nerve impulse from the sensory neurons in between to the motor neurons. Before that, let's look at this table again on the differences between the sensory and the motor neurons. For a nerve impulse transmission, it must go through 3 stages or the 3 different types of the neurons, the sensory, the motor, and the one that in between where we can see here. This is what we call the relay neurons. Relay neurons lie within the gray matters of the spinal cords. They help to transmit the nerve impulse from the sensory neurons to the brain, from the brains to the motor neurons, and also sometimes in some of the reflex actions directly from the sensory neurons to the motor neurons, like what we see here. When the receptor detects the stimuli, the information is sent via the sensory neurons to the spinal cord. Relay neurons in the spinal cord will then send the information to the brain, which then to the motor neurons. Relay neurons form we call the synapses with the sensory and the motor neurons. This is one way how the nerve impulse actually transmit or travel from one to another. If we zoom in what we see here, in between the neurons, they actually have a gap we call the synapse. What is actually a synapse? It's the junctions or the connections between 2 neurons. In order for the nerve impulse to transmit from one neuron to another neuron, they need to travel across the synapse by chemical means. It means they need to transmit through the neurotransmitters. Let's recap on 11.2, the different types of neurons. I give you a few seconds. Could you identify the different types of neurons in the diagram here? First one, second, and the third. Can you get a correct answer? For the first neuron is the motor neurons. We can identify this by a bigger by the bigger cell body shown here. Sensory neurons should be the easiest one to identify with the cell body protruded out. Relay neuron is smaller compared to the motor and the sensory neurons. Which neurons actually transmit the impulse from the receptor to the central nervous system? The answer is the second one, sensory neurons. Which neuron transmit the impulse from the central nervous system to the effector? Whenever if you see the word effectors, it actually referring to the motor neurons because they are required to carry out the actions. So the answer for this is 1, motor neurons. Which of the neurons transmit impulses between the neurons? This will be the third one, the relay neurons. In the next part of lessons, we will see how these neurons actually help the nervous system to process the information. See you in part 3.